welcome back.
Welcome to Let's Be Perfectly Queer,
A queer podcast creating space to talk about all things queer.
My name is Archie,
And I'm Katie.
and we are your hosts.
Yay.
Hosts. I hate saying that word.
Questions of how you identify, seeking answers to clarify. Whether you're queen
or somewhere in between, let's be perfectly queer.
Back for another week.
Fortnight.
We're back.
In your ear holes for once a fortnight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. When we are having a good fortnight, we are in your ear holes once a fortnight.
We are human,
Yes.
is what the crux of
gist?
it is.
Anyway, what's this episode about?
So this episode, getting right into it, is going to be basically a little bit of a chit-chat session.
Mm-hmm.
Us as your, not parental figures of the queer community, but like your cool uncle and aunt-ish of the queer community, we would like to chat to you about Christmas.
Yes.
Because it's like such a big topic when for queers going home for Christmas, or just like how to navigate it, that we're like, you know what? Let's have a chat about it. We'll share our experiences. We'll share our tidbits, because we do know some things over the years, because collaboratively we have 60 plus years of experience.
That is true.
Look at that.
That is very true.
Gosh, that makes us sound really like chef's kiss.
Smarter than we are.
Yeah, I feel like a professional. Not that I'm not a professional in other aspects of my life, but in this one.
Also, do you have green eyeshadow on, or is it just the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vibing.
Dude, I was
vibing.
like, oh, also, if you see me playing with my hands, I have fidget toys because I find it a lot easier to deal with.
And because last episode, when I was editing the videos, Katie was rubbing her laptop that I had to cut out half the videos that I wanted to use because it was irritating me so much that if it was irritating me, it's going to irritate you guys. So I had to change that up.
So yeah, that's what it is. I have these like little wormy things, which are a lot of fun to play with. So that's where my hands are going to, because I need things to fidget with.
So this episode, we're going to talk about specifically going home for Christmas, but also just, you know, what's it like going home as someone from the LGBTQIA plus community, and just some safety tips and things to preserve yourself.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Very true. Have you had good experiences with Christmas? Like before you came out as queer, did you enjoy Christmas?
Oh, before I came out as queer, I loved Christmas. Christmas was a big family thing. So I grew up in a small country town where most of my aunties, cousins, uncles, everybody was there, grandparents from both sides. So Christmas was always huge. And it was like a lunchtime and a dinner thing. As I got older, it kind of became just one because the siblings and the cousins would fight a lot. So it wasn't as big as it used to be, but it was huge. Like it was both sides of the family, usually mostly the Portuguese side with some of the Vietnamese family members coming along as well. There was drinking, games, a lot of food, like a lot of food. There'd be like a pig on the spit or something like that. It was a very big family communal thing, and all the adults would gather around a table and pretty much spend all day around the table chatting, hanging out, that kind of thing. And it was a different family member's turn every year to host. I think my uncle was every 2 years because he had the biggest property. But yeah, so it was a very, very big thing, and it was very family orientated.
And like, what was your favorite part about Christmas?
The food. No, I guess it was
You're so Portuguese.
It was seeing everybody. Like it was all seeing everybody, and just the traditions that we had. So the traditions we had was obviously coming from a Catholic family. There was midnight mass, so we'd all go to midnight mass, and then we'd go to granddad's and nana's house afterwards. Not all the time, so you'd be there after midnight mass, just talking, chatting, and that kind of thing. Another thing was we weren't allowed to open our presents till Granddad and Nana turned up, so you kind of had to wait because Granddad and Nana would go to all the grandkids' houses, and then you had to wait because you weren't allowed to open the presents, even though they always gave us money every year, but they wanted to see us open presents.
I can understand that. It's the joy of giving and being able to like see somebody.
Yeah, but they always gave us money and a bank account that we didn't open or anything on Christmas. And then... yeah, and then, you know, then we'd all go, like, everybody would bring food to someone's house and lots of dessert, lots of food, and yeah, it was good.
Nice.
How about yourself?
So my Christmases, I mean, a family trauma, like, guys. This is what it is. So I've never really liked Christmas. It's never been something that has been, it's always been, like, guests big in our house, but it was always just like a family thing. But it was never great. It was one of those really traumatizing times. And if you're out there experiencing trauma with family members, specifically having to deal with family members, I get you. That was my whole childhood. So it wasn't a fun time, despite as much hard work that my mum did. She was an absolute saint with all of that. But it's one of those things that as you get older, you realize that that's the way for a lot of families, whether it be a parental figure who's difficult or siblings who are difficult, or you've got extended family that are hard to deal with. It's something that even before being queer or adding that element to it, sometimes it is already difficult. And like, I think the favorite part about Christmas for me was, oh my gosh, it was definitely the food. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Even like, no matter what, even if it was traumatizing, dude, as an emotional eater, as somebody who loves food, that was always the best part. And my mum used to make like the most mad, and you've tasted it, her trifle.
Yeah.
Oh, her mango trifle is like, chef's kiss. The most best thing ever. And I always used to look forward to that. And when MasterChef was around, which may be showing our age, but when we used to watch MasterChef in the good years, and mum would always be like, oh, let's try out this. Let's do a crock and bush. Oh my goodness. She's an amazing lady. So yeah, that's what I used to look forward to with Christmas. And like, I guess the thing is did you find when you came out as queer or when you started realizing that you may have been part of the community, did you find it hard? You said the midnight mass was a big thing for you.
Well, since coming out as queer, I haven't really been home that much for Christmas because being at university and stuff and then getting a job was just too hard. In terms of finding out, I just hit it down really, really deep down until I went to university, and then I didn't really go home much because it is a fair trip. So not really, like, I haven't been home that often since being queer, coming out as queer. You know what I mean? So it's been for other events, not really Christmas.
Yeah.
Because I also worked in retail for many years and I couldn't get Christmas off. So it was very, very hard. And then the one year that I did get Christmas off, I got really frustrated at mum because she wouldn't let me do anything. So I just left early.
Oh.
I was getting really frustrated and agitated because she wouldn't let me do anything. And I said, I've just come from the busiest time in retail. I need to be doing things. I'm so bored here and I forgot how boring this place is if you don't let me do anything over Christmas when everything is closed. And she wouldn't let me do anything. And so I just got frustrated and left.
What do you mean? Like not even leave the house? She didn't let you do anything?
Well, there's not much to do. Like everything's closed. It's a small town.
Sure.
So I said, let me do things, let me help around, do that kind of stuff. And I was so bored that I was supposed to say Boxing Day and I was like, screw it. I just got in the car and left. She cried, but I was like, you're not listening to me and my needs. So I just got up and left.
And I think that's what it comes down to as well, is that when you realize that you need to look after yourself at Christmas, like that's such a major thing. I want to talk about a couple of topics on this. And I think one of the major things is looking after yourself and how to navigate relationships, people's requests of you, all those kind of things, while making sure that you are still prioritizing yourself in a very wholesome way and in a very authentic way, and saying yes to what you can do and sorry, no, I can't do that to things that you can't do as well.
And if this is bringing up any memories and you'd like to share it, please feel free to send us a voice note, DM, send us an email.
Sounds good. So I think that the thing is that there sometimes are a lot of people have difficult times with Christmas. And like myself, it's about knowing what's going to trigger you. And that's a hard thing. It's really hard. And so sometimes you find those acknowledgements with like going to therapy. Sometimes as an adult, you actually have to figure out why you're having emotions. It may not necessarily mean that sometimes, I don't know if this happens for you, but like I find that my brain sometimes doesn't connect with my body. And that, I know, I'll explain. I can see in your eyes. You're
I'm confused. What do you mean?
It gets to a point that you might be feeling an emotion and you're not really sure how to articulate it, but you're feeling it in your body, whether it be agitation or irritation, which are very similar, or nervousness or excitement. And your body is getting these feelings of agitation, but you can't really pinpoint what they're due to. Yeah. And sometimes it can be due to something that's physiological. So sometimes it can be, and for me, I have to go through and be like, am I wearing something comfortable? Am I uncomfortable with how I look? Am I uncomfortable with what I've eaten today? Am I uncomfortable because I haven't done any exercise and therefore I've got this nervous energy? Am I uncomfortable because I've put myself in a situation that leads me to feeling nervous? And sometimes nervous also translates in the same way as being agitated because your body can't really articulate that way. And I have to go specifically through a thing of being like, well, what is this feeling that I'm feeling? Because I don't know why, but that's just how my body works, is that I'm not yet, and not going to say that I'm never going to get to this point, But I can't really understand like why my body sometimes gets these irritations, and I'm not really sure where the stimulus is. So I guess my advice to people is like, try to identify why you're feeling a certain way. If you're feeling discomfort, figure it out.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that if you can figure out the source of discomfort, then you can help yourself more.
Yeah. And you don't owe anyone else your discomfort.
No. And you're the only one who really knows basis of what your needs are.
Yes.
As well as it's that whole spoon principle. If you've already taken away all these spoons from all these other things that you're dealing with, you're so low on your spoons and you can't really do things in those situations that can bring your spoons back because you're not in an area of safety where you can be like, all right, well, I'll go chill out in my room for a little bit.
Yeah,
or
I didn't
like,
have a room.
Yeah, you're not in your safe space. You couldn't chill out in your room. You couldn't go play music. You couldn't go do things that you might do to kind of chill you out for a little bit because you can't actually regain that. And it's those kind of things that you're just like, well, is it worth it?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel an obligation to that family just because you've been doing it the whole time means that you have to continue doing it.
Yeah.
That's not what life's about.
No.
Just because something's been the same way each year doesn't mean that it's going to work for you each year. Things change.
Yeah. And your priorities change. And the older you get, you realize the trauma based from family events. And as you get older, you just have to kind of come up with some better preservation tactics and strategies for your mental health.
Yeah.
Because, you know, unfortunately, our parents didn't grow up in an age where mental health was a priority. And they have traumas and they have traumas that they're passing on to us without even realizing it. You know, the traumas of Christmas and the big things. And, you know, mum was always so stressed and she doesn't get out of the kitchen. It's not the way that I envision Christmases anymore, you know? And I haven't been back to where I grew up since transitioning.
Yeah. And it's that whole thing of like, even if you haven't had a traumatic Christmas growing up, sounds like you've had great experiences with Christmas, which is really awesome. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to work for you having, first of all, that time off. And as adults, we're very busy. You might have a profession that allows you to have holidays over that period of time, or you might have a profession that doesn't, like when you're working in hospitality.
Yes.
In that you may have only had one day off or singular days off or like maybe a couple sporadically around, but you still have to look after yourself. For some people, if they are in a partnership or if they come from different families in themselves and have to attend a lot of different gatherings, that can be incredibly socially draining because it's not just, it's the idea behind it may be lovely in seeing everyone that you love, but also having the financial requirements that actually comes into it, whether it be like the travel of the petrol or the gift giving or whether it's the things that you bring along to it. Sometimes even if it is just yourself, it's the psychological things that come behind it, which is like the draining of having your social battery totally on because everyone has, I mean, you'd hope that everyone is wanting to have a good time at Christmas.
Yeah.
And those people who don't have a good time at Christmas may not necessarily be the Grinch. Sometimes they just come with their own trauma.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that people go into it with a bad idea, but it tends to be a lot more draining than you hope.
Sometimes, you know, if you need to go away at Christmas, go away.
Yeah.
You've just got to do what's best for you, and you don't owe your holidays to anyone.
No.
You know, life is so short and you only get so much time to live that you don't owe your holidays to anyone. And I know it's harder in the city, and I know that growing up in the country, it was a lot easier for all the families to get together. It's a 5-minute drive most of the time. And everybody's like, oh, it's the country idea. We're like, all families come together, both sides, doesn't matter. But then it doesn't always happen that way because then you also have like, oh, well, this person doesn't really get on that person. We need to go there and whatnot. And it's even harder for families who come from parents who are separated, you know, and then trying to divide all your time. You don't owe your time to anybody. It's your time to do as you wish, and you make plans that you want to make. It wasn't till I got older that we started doing Friendmas. We don't have families for Christmas. We don't, because I live so far away from my family.
Funny. We don't have families for
Christmas. Don't
orphans.
Yes.
Orphans for Christmas. Yeah, and then we'll get back into them in February.
I used to do Orphan Christmas working in retail. I couldn't get the time off. So it was Orphan Christmas. Whoever can't go home for Christmas, bring a present, come hang out with us. And I found those were a lot less stressful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, they're going to be there and there's no obligation to them. So if they can make it, they'll make it. If they can't, there is no problem. You make it next year or not. you don't feel obligated to attend these things, and you don't feel obligated to try to make someone come.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such an important thing as well. If you are hosting something, people are allowed to say no. If it doesn't work out for them, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes it's the boundary that is really difficult to put in, but then also you have to respect. I found personally how it's worked with us is that we don't have a family Christmas anymore. We catch up with friends.
Yep.
And then we catch up with our family or specific people that are within the family.
Within the family group. Yep.
At specific times. And that kind of, you still get the capturing of getting to see the people that you love without having the trauma behind it. And it is going to be the first time it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
It really is. I remember the first time that we did it and having discussions with family members and being like, well, sorry, I'm not coming to the family dinner. Like, I'm not doing
this.
It's
uncomfortable. We don't want to be there.
But also that's the whole thing of like not even having to justify.
Yeah.
If somebody loves you, they'll understand.
Yeah.
And they'll already know what's happening in your life. And sometimes it just is what it is. Like, you can't do it. Doesn't mean that you're never going to do it. Sometimes it does mean that you're never going to do it and just be like, well, that's not going to work for me. But it's having that, respecting yourself. And if you make a boundary, that's a good thing. Good on you. But making sure that you have the resilience and support to stick with that boundary, because sometimes
don't feel pressured. Don't give in to the pressure of, oh, well, this might be this person's last Christmas. No.
Yeah.
You don't owe that to anybody. You can still spend time with them. And like with us doing the friend catch-up and the parent catch-ups or whatever it may be, we extend Christmas. So Christmas is not just one day. You know, it's a collection of different events. So there's a bit more magic to it because we're like, oh, well, this is a Christmas season. It's just not one day. It's like, oh, well, we've got this with our friends. We've got these things. We've got Friendmas. We've got that kind of thing. And it extends the magic of Christmas. So you just find out what works for you. And what works for us might not work for you. You might have a very limited social battery and doing all these events won't work. You don't have to do that. You just do what works for you.
And that's such a good point of having multiple different events. It doesn't necessarily, because I know some people don't, I was going to say support, but that's not the right. Some people don't do Christmas. Some people do other festive events. And if that's what works for you, that's what works for you. Having a festive season or celebrating at different times of the year because of either different religious principles or different value systems, I think that's absolutely brilliant because sometimes this time of the year it gets inundated with Christmas, and Christmas again comes from like you've got Christianity, Catholicism, all that kind of stuff. It gets a lot. Yeah,
it's become more of a commercial holidays because a lot of people who are atheists also celebrate Christmas. So it doesn't really have the kind of same connotations as it used to. So, you know, don't also feel bad if you don't celebrate Christmas. You don't have to.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Doesn't have to be there. I mean, the sales are great.
Yeah, love sales. I love Boxing Day, but we're not going to be here. Well, we will be, but we're not going to go out for Boxing Day and stuff. Yeah. I'll check Amazon. It'll be fine.
There are so many sales around this time anyway. It's so true.
Yeah, so it's just about, you know, preserving yourself and your mental health and knowing maybe, you know, reaching out to support services at this time of year because they are a lot of places that, you know, a phone call away. And if you know that a family member is going to be difficult, especially if they don't accept you for being LGBTQIA+, then you have those strategies put in place for those circumstances that may arise. So it's not just, okay, not going in prepared. Yeah, if you have to do Christmas stuff and you know that it's going to impact on your mental health, then you have strategies put in place.
Yeah, that's incredibly fair. And on that note as well is if you have told your family or if you haven't told your family. So if there are some family members within your family itself that do know and there's some that don't know, what would be your advice to people on how to navigate that situation?
You don't owe staying in the closet to anybody. When I was still presenting as female and I brought a partner home for the first time, my mum took me aside and said, you know, oh, we're happy that you do this, but no holding hands in public. Don't say anything to your grandparents. And for me, I was like, but you're putting me back in the closet. And just because you're uncomfortable, why should I put your comfort ahead of my own?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I was like, I was really, really mad at my mum for that because I get it. It comes from the Portuguese thing. And there is quite a large Portuguese community. Well, there was, and they talk. You know, at the end of the day, if they talk about me, they talk about me. Yeah. I'm not there. Who cares? Like, you know, I remember this one time that I went back for a month to spend time with my granddad who was sick. And so we went fishing every single day, that kind of thing. the rumour mill that I dropped out of university because I was covered in tats. I dropped out of university and I'm a drug dealer because I'd spent a month with my family. You know, at the end of the day, I was like, you do what you want. I don't care. You can make up every story about me, but I'm not going to diminish who I am to please you, a small community who likes to talk.
Yeah.
Simple as that, you know? So you've got to put yourself first. And if your family say, oh, you can't tell Uncle Joe or Grandma will get upset, it doesn't matter. You do not owe staying in the closet to anybody. If you are comfortable being who you are in front of them, be who you are. If you're not, maybe it's not the right environment for you at Christmas.
Yeah, that's such a fair point. I think also the thing is that the fact that she says, I accept you, but I don't accept you, acceptance should never have
a but.
It should never be like, I accept you, but. That's not an acceptance. That's internalized homophobia.
Yes.
That's them thinking they're okay with it, but they're like, the person over there who is homophobic, I'm not okay with confronting them, and I'm not okay with it's homophobia, and it's saying that person who's homophobic, that you value them being more comfortable than the person
than your
that
own
you
child.
love. Yeah, than your own child.
And so, like, now she's great. Now she's like the biggest supporter. We'll put all over Facebook with being very proud of who I am and that kind of thing. But at the time, it was a double-edged sword. Like, yeah, you accept me, but you don't accept me at the same time.
And also, if you think that you can't come out to somebody, if it comes a situation that you are scared to come out to somebody because you're scared of what the ramifications are going to be, or you know that person is going to be argumentative, or they're not going to accept you, and it's actually going to end up in a violent or a emotionally or physically abusive situation, then it's not good for you to be in that situation to start off with.
Yeah.
If you are scared to come out to somebody, specifically scared, then it's not good for you to be in that situation, and you should probably not have a relationship with them.
And you can grow it back if that's something you want to do, and if they're not going to accept you, then there are other people out there who will be your family.
Absolutely, there are.
And then thinking about that as well. So I have not been back to my small town since I started transitioning, and that is partly due to fear.
Yeah.
I wanted to wait a long time so that I wasn't in that awkward phase where the people would still very much recognize me and be like, what's going on here? Because I need to preserve my own safety. And I've had family members saying, oh, when are you going to visit? You know, come back and visit, that kind of stuff. I know what people are like in that town, and at no fault of their own, they are very small-minded at times based on not having the broad community of having a lot of people who are LGBT and that kind of thing. And, you know, they did a queer event that got a bit of a hate on Facebook and stuff. So that just proved to me why I have not visited. It's not but that I love my family, I do, but I also have to preserve my own safety. And now I could probably go back, and that we have spoke about going back, but up until this point when I know that I passed really, really well, for my own safety, I was not going to a small town that far away from the city.
Yeah. Because there's so many elements to that. It's not having the safety of being able to get out of there quickly.
Yes.
But it's also that a lot of people aren't educated in the queer community.
No. And they try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I want to restate that. I don't mean in the queer community, but I mean about the big queer community. Because granted, when you are in a large city, you have more opportunities to meet people of different backgrounds.
Yes.
Which is great. I think it's really important. Whereas in country towns, it doesn't necessarily have that amount of diversity, and people who are diverse tend to leave because they can't find their own community.
And that's why I left.
Yeah. And it's hard as well because, like, sometimes people do want to learn about the LGBTQIA plus community, but it does mean that you're then having to educate them.
Yes.
And it's not your responsibility as a queer person to educate other people about being queer.
If you want to do that, start a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, do it. If you're happy to do it, that's great, but it's actually not your responsibility to be like, oh, yes, and this is what it is, and let me tell you about all the rallies that we've done, and let's tell you about
it's very
all
exhausting.
the things. It's incredibly exhausting.
It takes a lot of spoons to go and educate other people.
Yeah.
You know, and especially sometimes, even more so when they argue with you.
Yeah.
When you're trying to educate someone because they've asked to be educated, but then every point you say, they shut it down or they come up with some kind of argument.
Like it's a debate.
And that's what it was like when I was visiting before, when I was just presenting as female and as a lesbian. It was constantly like, but what about this point? But what about this point? But this, and so it was very exhausting. And then knowing now that, you know, going back as trans, how many inappropriate questions and how many people would be debating who I am. And so, you know, I had to preserve my own safety, and I haven't been back there in I think 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And that is a long time because I used to go back once a year or a couple of times a year, and I haven't been back in 3 or 4 years because I knew what I needed to do for myself.
On the note of having inappropriate questions, because
Yes.
I think that's such a good subject to address as well. How do you personally, because I'm sure we've got different ways of addressing inappropriate questions.
Yep.
How do you tend to address an inappropriate question?
I say I'm just not going to answer that.
Yeah.
Depends on who asks that.
Okay.
So if it's a family member, I'm just like, I'm not going to answer that. That's rude. Or just tell them like, that's not an appropriate question to ask.
Mm.
If it's someone who's like a distant thing, I'm like, I just walk away.
Yeah.
If someone asks a question and you're not comfortable, make sure you have some of those pre-approved and like, you know what I mean? But have some predetermined answers that you're going to go with. Because that's what I do when I know that I'm going to be like, we had a family wedding that we went to. And I already had in my mind 5, 6, 7 different pre-approved answers that I was going to give had someone ask me something inappropriate. It didn't happen, which was great. But I kind of just don't answer them. Or I say, not the time or place.
Yeah, that's such a fair point.
Yeah.
Because if you have something already there in your brain, it's easier to call upon.
Yes.
Especially because in those kind of situations, if somebody asks you something really inappropriate, you kind of disengage your frontal lobe and go into flight or fight response, and you're just like,
Do you, how about yourself? So have you ever had those kind of moments where someone like a family member or a friend has asked you some inappropriate questions, and how do you go about it?
all the time. So I don't tend to get them as much these days about myself. I get them a lot about you, funnily enough, in which people ask me inappropriate things. And I, similarly to what you said, I've been like, look, that's not an appropriate question. And if it's been somebody close to me, I will explain why it's not an appropriate question. Yeah. And just be like, look, this is what you're saying to me. This is what the context is. You would not say that to somebody who isn't in this situation. So why do you think it's okay to say to my partner? And a lot of the time they're like, oh, I didn't think about it in that way. Yeah. And sometimes people are actually curious because they disassociate from the whole situation. They disassociate from the idea that this is a relationship and we're human beings. Yeah. They kind of go, oh my goodness, you need to tell me everything about it. And I'm like, well, no, I don't. I don't need to tell you about anything. And funnily enough, there is a whole internet out there.
If you really wanted to, there is a breadth of information for you to find out the stuff that you want to find out. Reddit. Look on Reddit. There's so much information.
There are so many things.
Down the rabbit hole. So it's like, I'm sure that some of you who are listening have been on the awkward end of conversations. Even people who aren't part of the LGBTQIA plus community, but who are trying to get pregnant.
Yeah. There are a lot of questions that you get out there just as general, heterosexual couples.
It doesn't just affect the queer community. So if you are one of our allies who are listening, make sure that you also have some safety things put in place if you know some inappropriate questions or some things may be brought up.
Yeah. Because there's a whole thing about, oh my goodness, it's the whole pregnancy thing or when are you getting married thing or like, what are you doing with your life? Oh, I saw the great thing the other day that was the potential you see in other people is not actually the potential you see in other people, that it's actually what you would do in their lives. But that doesn't work because you're not in their circumstances and you're never actually going to know the full extent of what's happening in their life.
That's exactly
and I thought that's so interesting because there's nothing quite like being at a family gathering and being like, oh, they should have gone and done this with their lives. And you're like, well, no, because you're not living their life.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. You don't know what it's like. And even if you do know what it's like even if you do know everything that's happening, which is baffling to me, but even if you do know everything that's happening, it still might not be applicable to them because they've got a different set of values as you. Maybe they don't want to be a Lego genius. You never know. I think the other thing that's really important is bringing supports. So whether that be a physical human being as support, bring them.
Or a support animal.
Or support little jellies to fiddle with. Like you never know. There is whatever is going to make you feel more comfortable. If you are having to do the Christmas thing, like if you want to do the Christmas thing and you are sitting in that situation and you're like, oh yeah, I would like to do that, but there is something that's going to make me more comfortable, do the thing that makes you feel more comfortable. Yeah. If your family is pushing you to wear something you don't want to wear, don't. Yeah. Because by you being more comfortable will make a better situation for you and therefore a better situation for the whole people involved because then you'll feel happier. Yeah. And I think people forget that the whole point of the festive season is meant to be happiness. Yeah. And it's the celebration of happiness. It's not about the obligation that you've got to other people. It's literally about happiness and sharing your happiness with others or by yourself.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with being home alone.
You can always
on
be
Christmas.
home watching Christmas movies or reading a good book. You do what you want to do. It's your time. It's your Christmas. You do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You want a day of crafts by yourself? Do a day of crafts by yourself.
That sounds beautiful.
So, and that's one thing that as you get older, you realize how short life is.
Yes.
And life is short. You do what you want with the time that you do have on this earth.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to do Christmas, don't do Christmas. You don't want to do Christmas with your family? Don't do Christmas with your family. If you want to go to the beach and just spend the day at the beach, do what you want to do and what will make you happy. Most importantly, your mental health comes first before the happiness of your family.
Exactly. And choose short-term discomfort over long-term resentment.
Yes.
Because if it's going to be a short term where you're just saying no to people and you're putting in boundaries, but you're going to resent them for the rest of your life, the rest of your life is a lot longer.
Yeah.
And harboring resentment, it leads to a lot of trauma, a lot of therapy. Therapy's expensive. The other thing is we're going to put a lot of, as always, we're going to put a lot of links in the show notes because, like we did mention, Christmas is a really difficult time for people. And sometimes it is a time of loss. And just because you do have trauma and you are separating yourself from people because you need to for your own safety or that you need to because it's not good, doesn't mean that you're not going to have a feeling of loss at that time.
Yeah, you're going to grieve over what once was and what you had. And we might even put up some questions on our stories and, of some, what do you do at Christmas to help with your own mental health, or what strategies have you put into place if visiting family who are not the most open or the most loving about you being LGBTQIA+.
Or you being anything.
Or anything.
There's nothing quite like going to a family thing and get told that you're fat. Ugh.
Oh, all the time. That's from my Vietnamese grandma. Pokes your belly and goes, "Mup, getting fat."
There's nothing quite like it.
It's just like, yeah, she'll poke your belly.
Yeah.
And then when you're skinny, she taps your belly and rubs it.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
And then gives you the thumbs up.
Oh, that's even worse. You'd be like, what you're doing is good. Starve.
I remember when I went back with the tattoos, she grabbed my arm and was like, yeah, like yucky. Like,
right. Yeah.
But she rubbed my belly and was like, thumbs up, and then went to my tattoos, rubbed it, and was like, not so good.
Oh my gosh. There's nothing quite like that, is it? I find it really interesting because the other thing is like family acceptance of tattoos. That's so funny.
Oh, my mum hates them.
It's so funny because like people will have these opinions again of like how they would live your life.
Yeah.
You ruined your skin.
Yeah.
Why?
You're
What were you going to do with
in 20 years' time?
Were you going to skin me and put me up on like the shelf? Like, what was this for? Like, I mean, if it's not me, I'm probably going to end up with skin cancer. Like, what is the point to this? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, there's all these things.
Yeah.
Festive season can be
a tough
such a tough time, but also find what you love.
Yeah.
And if you're doing what you love may not be festive, make it festive.
Yeah.
Put a bloody Christmas hat on while you're doing it, and then suddenly it's festive.
Yeah.
It's funny how things can be festive when you
and
just
it doesn't have to be festive. If you don't like Christmas, just be a Grinch.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I've got like a Grinch top on at the moment. It's like my favourite top. Archie found it for me. I'm like, I love it
You're
so
welcome.
much.
She hyperfixated and needed to find a shirt at like 6:45 last night.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did, guys. It was great.
But yeah.
I think we've covered everything.
I think so. If not, we'll do up some topics and some posts and stuff and get a bit of conversation happening around on Instagram.
Yeah. Feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah.
Oh, granted, the next thing is that
we are going on break. This is the end of season 1 because we're going to go on break for roughly 6 weeks if we plan it right.
Yes.
So then we can come back and yeah.
But yeah, we are going on a break, which means that if you are going to message us, please feel free to message us. But
we may not get back to you as quick as we normally do. We've been pretty bad with our messages lately because it is the silly season and, towards the end of school and that kind of thing. But we will get back to messages.
But we will get back to you. It just will be delayed.
Yes.
And we look forward. We've got a lot of fun things for the next year.
Yeah, we've got some great ideas and stuff. So please stick around. I know it's hard when we're not coming up on your feed and stuff as often, but please don't forget about us. Message us. We'll do some posts and stuff to remind you what our faces look like and that we're still here and still around.
Absolutely. And we are potentially going to do a little bit of a travel bit.
Hopefully. We've got some cheap Amazon microphones, so we'll see how they go.
And then we do have some guests for next year, which are going to be really interesting. So if you're interested in queer dating, we have a professional from Hinge coming on from that. If you're interested in how eating disorders affect the queer community, we've got a professional talking about that. So we've got a lot of fun things / interesting things and interesting topics for the next year.
Stay tuned for the next year.
Stay tuned for season 2.
Yeah, so thank you so much. We hope that you have a great holiday season, however you spend it. And we'll see you in the new year
Absolutely.
for season 2.
For season 2.
Until next time, until next year, I hope that we have been
Perfectly queer.
Let's be perfectly queer.